Okie doke.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our nonprofit legislative briefing with Senate Majority Leader Schumer. My name is Chai Chindasurat. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm the Vice President of Policy at Nonprofit New York. I will be your moderator today. For visual accessibility, I am a mixed-raced, Southeast Asian and white man, light skin tone, short dark brown hair. Today, I am wearing a blue blazer, a black headset, and I'm sitting in front of a white brick wall. I am joining you today from Manhattan, which is the land of the Lenape people. The briefing today is being recorded. All participants are muted. We are trying our best to get ASL interpretation. We've had a bit of a mix-up, but hopefully that will be coming. Captioning is available. And we will share all questions that come in through the Q&A feature with the senator and his team following the briefing. And so we will now begin. I would like to next introduce Tim Delaney, CEO of the National Council of Nonprofits.
Great, thanks, Jai. Good afternoon. I'm Tim Delaney, and my personal pronouns are he, him, and his. I'm a white male in my 60s. I'm wearing glasses and a white shirt with blue vertical stripes. Some might even call them Yankee pinstripes. I'm the president and CEO of the National Council of Nonprofits, and I'm delighted to join you with my nonprofit colleagues here in New York. Welcome you to today's legislative briefing. But let me begin by thanking Senator Schumer, Senate Majority Leader Schumer, for delivering big time for the charitable nonprofit community, most recently with the American Rescue Plan Act, signed into law earlier this month. That new law delivers on several priorities that many of you raised on calls like this one with the senator. I'm joining you today from Washington, D.C., where much of that sausage, known as legislation, was made. We at the National Council of Nonprofits had an up-close and personal relationship with this new law, and I can say without dispute that one guiding hand throughout the legislative process was that of Leader Schumer's. Indeed, maybe I should say guiding foot sometimes, because occasionally some of the players needed a swift kick to fix the law to benefit the work of charitable nonprofits like you all. Maybe we will even get to hear some of those stories on this call. What we all need to remember is that Leader Schumer made the difference for charitable nonprofits, not only in New York, but across the country. And for that, I thank you, sir. Now I'd like to pass the mic over to my friend and colleague, Kelly Matthews of New York Council of Nonprofits, to offer a few words of welcome. Kelly?
Hi, thank you, Tim and Chai. Good afternoon. My name is Kelly Matthews. I'm COO and Senior VP of Nikon's Financial Management Group. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm a 50+ white woman joining you from Mohican Indigenous land. The New York Council of Nonprofits and its affiliates, the Council Services Plus, Board Strong, and Innovative Charitable Initiatives, provide a comprehensive suite of services designed to meet the diverse needs of charitable organizations throughout New York State and beyond. We are leaders in delivering innovative programs in virtually every area of nonprofit operations, governance, and advocacy, helping thousands of nonprofits in New York State achieve sustainability and growth each year. And we invite you to visit nikon.org to learn more. And again, I echo Tim and Chai in thanking Senator Schumer for his leadership, his perseverance in advocating and leading the way for New York's charitable nonprofits. And with that, it is my pleasure to introduce Meg Barnett, the CEO of the Nonprofit New York, and welcome, Meg.
Thank you so much. Yes, I'm Meg Barnett. My pronouns are she, hers. I am thrilled to be part of the Nonprofit New York team. I am barely 50+, white woman with dark hair and wearing a black shirt in front of a bookcase with some glasses on today. And I am coming to you from Lenape land, also known as Brooklyn. So thank you very much to Tim and to Kelly. And thank you most of all to Majority Leader Schumer. I am still celebrating the fact that New York has our first ever majority leader, and big thanks to your fabulous staff, particularly Julieta Lopez, for making the conversation possible today. It's hard for me to even really imagine the demands on your schedule. And so it says a lot that you have prioritized conversations with us and with the nonprofit sector. So as we gather this afternoon, we continue to mourn the loss of life and violence that have resulted from an outrageous mishandling of the pandemic, deadly inaction around guns, deep-rooted systemic racism and xenophobia. We stand in solidarity today with our Asian and Asian American colleagues, neighbors, and friends. We see you, and we know that while the hate directed against your communities is recent, while our awareness of the hate directed toward your community is recent, your fear and suffering are not. And we stand with all Black, Indigenous, and people of color communities in denouncing white supremacy, which has exposed itself over and over again over the last year and was clearly and painfully on display yesterday as we watched an elected state legislator, a Black woman who in many ways is a giant, but physically stands at 5'2", being roughly forcibly removed from her state capitol by multiple white state troopers while the governor signed unconscionable voter suppression measures into state law. Nonprofits motivate and facilitate voter engagement and voter education. Our work fuels democracy, and we fundamentally reject any version of the idea that by the people, for the people, only includes some people. This weekend, Jewish families everywhere will start the celebration of Passover, a holiday that commemorates our exodus from Mitzrayim, which translates to narrow place. And it feels like a particularly good time to focus on our need to escape the narrow places that hold us all back and focus on the fact that liberation isn't real until it's truly shared. So Senator Schumer, thank you for all of the work that you've done on behalf of the sector and the communities we serve. Thank you for the work that you will continue to do and we will continue to push you to do to help all of us, including the newest New Yorkers, navigate these challenging times. We really appreciate you being here. Thank you and Hag Sameach.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Meg. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Chai, for all the good work you do. And most of all, I want to thank all of our nonprofits who are on this Zoom across New York State. You do so much good in so many ways. When there's a group of people in our society who need help in one way or another, there's always a nonprofit there. And I have been so supportive of nonprofits throughout my career, but now particularly during this COVID crisis, when you are needed more than ever before. So thank you for the good work you do. And one other thing people forget, nonprofits are a very important sector of our New York and national economy. About 20% of the jobs in New York State are in the nonprofit world. So it's an economic engine as well as an engine of, for people who need help. And you do so much good. So thank you. I don't know how we would have survived this COVID crisis without you. So I also want to thank our groups, New York, Nonprofit New York, the National Council of Nonprofits, the New York Council of Nonprofits. All of you have done a great job. And before I talk about the American Rescue Plan, let me just say for a moment, how important the work is we're doing in the Senate. Yesterday, there was lots of news, so we didn't get much publicity, but I was able as leader with my Democratic colleagues to do 3 things in the Senate, all important. Number 1, they wanted to cut back on Medicare and Medicaid by 2%. We blocked that. Number 2, we extended the PPP program, which affects you, through June 30th, which will allow many more people to apply. And 3, I put on the floor a legislation by Senators Hirono and Duckworth, the 2 Asian American women in the Senate, and my own New York colleague, Grace Mung, in the House, that will go after hate crimes against Asian Americans. I know Meg mentioned it, and I've been to so many rallies, and I just ache for the communities, a wonderful community. And people tell me they're just afraid to walk down the street because they'll be lambasted, screamed at, and even hurt. Awful thing. And we all know that bigotry against one group is bigotry against all. So we must fight this every step of the way, and we will, and it'll be the first piece of legislation we come to when we finish the Easter Passover break. It's now in line to get that. I put that in on late last night before I drove back, Meg, to my dear Brooklyn. I'm not only the first majority leader from New York, I'm the first senator from Brooklyn in I think 180 years or something like that. And I'm a proud Brooklynite, as you know. Okay, let's get to ARP. We've delivered. When we were running, we said, if you elect us, America, we will deliver for you. This won't be like Donald Trump, where all he does is scapegoats and racism and BS. I would use the full word if I was just in Brooklyn, but many of you are from the more genteel regions of our state. All of his horror, he defiled America and he's defiled the presidency. But we said, kick him out, get us in, and you will see real results. And I believe that's what we've begun to show. We have more to do. Don't get me wrong. We cannot rest on our laurels, but it's very good to let people understand that we did something. And the one thing I'm going to ask every nonprofit on this call, which I have asked before, I know that New York Nonprofits has sent you emails about what we accomplished, but we need the rank and file to know, to show them that government can do some good for them. And so I am asking each of you on the phone and each of your nonprofits to do an email, not just to post it on your website, but an email to all the people you help, if you have that list, otherwise post it, and let people know what Chuck Schumer and the Democrats have been able to do for them. Raise your hand if you're going to do it. Okay, I see a lot of hands raised, so please do that, because we have to show people that government can help. It's not just two parties fighting that has nothing to do with their lives. That helps us on into the future. So please do that. Okay, now, American Rescue Plan. I'm so proud of my caucus. We stuck together. They put all kinds of nasty amendments on the floor. If we lost a single vote on those to try and undo it, they attacked immigrants. They attacked that we were giving money to people who were in the prisons. They attacked LGBTQ, transgender, putting that on the floor. They attacked us on being green. They wanted to restore the pipeline, Keystone. We beat back every single one of these amendments. Every one of my caucus members, even some you've read about in the paper, not to mention any names. So this is a big accomplishment in itself that we stuck together. Now, the ARP, the American Rescue Plan, is historic. It's probably the most progressive piece of legislation that's been passed since the Great Society. And it's going to affect just about every New Yorker. It provides $1.9 trillion of relief. And for New Yorkers, it's over 100 and some odd billion dollars. I always write these programs so New York is never left out. I love New York and it's in my bones. And every formula we write, the right wing, the Republicans always tried to pick on us, but we're not letting them do that. But let me give you one fact which shows the difference with us having power. The big Republican bill, the only one they passed really for 4 years, was the Trump tax cuts. These were tax cuts aimed at the very wealthy and the big corporations. Do you know 83% of the benefit went to the top 1%, the rich and powerful? Do you know what percentage of the benefit in ARP goes to the top 1%? Zero, nada, nothing. And we aimed it particularly at people in poverty. So the bottom 20% of America, the often voiceless people, will get a 20% increase in their incomes. That's a lot. And that will matter a great deal. This is according to the Tax Policy Center, a progressive policy group. So this shows you the contrast between us and them, what we're doing and what they're doing. Okay, on the plan itself, I'm going to go over some things. There are some you may not know about that I'll emphasize a little more, and then I'll talk specifically about nonprofits before, I don't know who's doing it, Chai, are you, the Q&A? Okay. First, as you know, we extended unemployment benefits through September. It's $300 on top of the state benefit, but what's really important is all kinds of non-traditional unemployed who couldn't get unemployment benefits in the past get our benefit. Gig workers, freelancers, self-employed, all of that. All of those folks will get it. The direct payments, we promised that we wanted 2,000. McConnell wanted none. You may remember when he was in power in December, I held us back. I made us stay through Christmas to vote on it every single time. He still said no. We compromised at 600. But now the additional 1,400 to bring us to 2,000 is done. Anyone up to 75,000 gets the 1,400. If you're an individual, if you're a couple, of two people in a family, 150,000 is the limit, and you get 1,400 a person. So a family of four will get $5,600. And that's going to help our economy and help people with money in their pockets. COVID vaccine and testing. This was a big thing. We have accelerated the vaccines and we are making sure that they are free. We put that in the law. You don't have to pay. Don't let your insurance company charge you a copayment or a deductible. And we said people of color and poorer communities should go first. So just yesterday, and I announced, guess where we're going to locate a lot of these vaccination sites? Community health centers. These are in the poorer communities of our country. They're accessible. People are used to going into them. You know, it's not going to an austere hospital, not austere, but, you know, big hospital downtown, or having to travel far. And every one of these community health centers, and I'll get you the list and you can send it out if you want. You won't have to wait. And within a month, there'll be no qualifications. If you're over 18, boom, you get the vaccine. And that's going to really make a difference. It is estimated now by, you know, the late spring that enough people will be vaccinated that we can begin to get life back to normal. So that's a huge difference. Trump screwed this whole thing up, didn't get any vaccines out. We get in power, Joe Biden, Democrats in the House and Senate, and we're getting this done. Education, there's $9 billion for New York schools. They're flexible. They help the schools open safely. The schools can use them for all kinds of needs that COVID presented to them, including, and guess how we distributed the money again? Title I. So the poorer school districts get more money than the wealthier suburban school districts. That's very important. I had some gas from Albany about, not the legislators, from the governor's office about it, but this is where it should go. And it goes straight to education. They can't cut it back or anything. And they can use it for summer school. So many of our kids lost out on education, and they can use this money to help people try to catch up, kids try to catch up in summer school. It also helps IDIA people with disabilities. We got another $2.6 billion for our colleges and universities, and half that money has to go to students in the form of financial aid because students were in trouble. Childcare, big. The childcare advocates wanted $50 billion. They said, that's our max, you'll never get it. We got it. $50 billion for childcare. New York gets about $2 billion of that, including helping support childcare providers because they have increased needs. In healthcare, we did a lot of different things with the ACA and others. We're going to lower the healthcare premiums for millions of people. People who paid $1,000 a month will pay $300-400 a month. And there's $25 billion in healthcare to go to underserved communities and communities of color. Here's one that people don't know about that I want to stress. So I got a call early on from Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez, which Corona was the epicenter in Queens. And she said people are, you know, one of the most heartbreaking things for me to watch was children and grandchildren pressing their face against the thick glass of a hospital window because their loved ones were dying of COVID. They couldn't touch them, they couldn't hug them, they couldn't kiss them. There was no saying goodbye. It breaks my heart. Adding insult to injury, once the loved one passed, they didn't have the money for a proper burial or funeral. So the Congresswoman called me, said, can you get this done? We did. It's in the bill, up to $9,000 for funeral and burial expenses. And if you did it in 2020, the past year, you can get reimbursed. We are setting up a hotline. I will get everyone the number in a few weeks. FEMA is doing this. And there are going to be people on the phone who speak multiple languages, Spanish, French, whatever, you know, for the Haitian community, whatever is needed. And they're going to be very sympathetic and help people get these dollars. But part of the key to this, because of the expenses, is our funeral directors. So I've asked people to reach out to the funeral directors in their community. We'll give you a sheet on this, Chai, and if you could distribute it, because people don't know of this, but it's a very important and good benefit. Okay? All right. So we should have a hotline ready in a while. Paid leave, paid sick and family leave, we pay for it. Now, we couldn't require it because of the reconciliation laws, but any employer who wants to do it will get 100% reimbursement. Food and nutrition assistance, we increased SNAP, the dream of the food community, by 15%. We also broaden the eligibility for young adults at homeless shelters to get meals, and we greatly continued and expanded the PEBT program. All the kids who used to get breakfast and lunch in school will get it delivered to their homes. That will continue. Housing, to prevent people from getting kicked out of their house. This was a specialty for me. $21 billion. New York gets 2.5. And we are working with some of the groups, Sia Weaver and Josh Weston, you may know some of them, to make sure the money gets to the right place, that the state can't mess around with it, and it goes right to the tenants who need help. But some people, like in poorer communities, I get this from a lot of churches. Well, we have 2 family houses, and what about the landlord, okay? If the tenant won't apply, the landlord in a small little house can, because they'll lose their home if they don't get the rent from the tenant downstairs. I was raised in a 2-family house. I know what this is like. Okay, we got 100 million for housing counseling, but this is one that many of you in the housing and homeless area should know. We got $5 billion to deal with homelessness, and it's flexible. It can be used to take hotels and make them into homeless shelters and things like that. We got $5 billion in addition for emergency housing, and $9 billion for mortgage assistance. If you own your home, don't get kicked out, and very important utility assistance. What good is it if you can pay the rent and you can't afford the electric bill or the water bill and they shut it off? So that's in there too. Now, nonprofits. This is the focus for you. I fought tirelessly. I'm the reason nonprofits are in. When the Republicans were in, they said, we just want for-profits. I said, NFW. Do you all know what that means? I'm allowed to say that even if I don't spell it out. NFW. We have to include our nonprofits, and we got it done. Okay. And so that means there's relief through PPP and EIDL for all the nonprofits. In the CARES Act, we made sure nonprofits were added, all 501c3s, and the employee retention tax credit is for nonprofits. That was increased so that it's now up to $40,000 pay, up to $40,000 salary and up to 70% of the salary that you can get as a full tax credit, refundable. If you're a nonprofit, just getting you something off on your taxes doesn't help, but it's refundable. This is a big deal. This is another one, Chai, that people don't know about and are not taking advantage of. As they say in Brooklyn, spread the word, okay? All right, next. We expanded PPP because the first time out, the big shots got all the money. The chains, you know, the Olive Gardens and all these other places. Oh, I left out the Restaurants Act. Forget, it's going back. Restaurants now get a 6-month grant, as do arts venues. Save our, maybe they put that in here later, I don't know. But make sure that if you're a restaurant, there's an addition to the PPP, you can apply for the PPP, but then when the restaurant grant comes out, you can get that. Same with arts venues. And that's a 6-month grant through September. Really, restaurants and arts venues, you know, our independent stages and venues suffered the most because that's where people gather. Those are the industries that suffered the most, the businesses. So there's money for that. But anyway, we expanded we changed the PPP so we favored small businesses, minority businesses, et cetera. So if you got rejected the first time, nonprofits out there, apply again. It's much easier. And if you got rejected the first time, you can get the first grant and the second grant. So I have too many people who come to me and tell me, I got rejected, I'm not going to apply again. No, it's a new world. It's Democratic world, not Republican world that favored the big shots. Okay, so that's very important. Make sure you know. All right. Okay. We also included the 501c6 organizations in the original PPP, but we needed to still help our larger nonprofits. And so when we did the American Rescue Plan, we expanded nonprofit eligibility for PPP. And so a lot of this larger nonprofits can get in. And now all of the 501cs can get in, not just if you're a 6. So we've had some 9s and we've had some 3s, and I mean, 3s are good, but anyone can get them. So that's very important. But we added larger nonprofits. There, you're helping people too, and you're suffering too. So if you're above the 300 limit and even above the 500 limit, we have expanded it. So as long as you don't have 500 at one location, which very few people do, you can get it. Make sure people know that. Okay. Next, for nonprofit groups, as I said, with multiple EINs, you're subject to 20 million, which is the same for restaurants and local media, 20 million limit. So if you have 10 different places, they each can apply. Only limit is you can't have 500 in one place, very few do, and the total is 20. All right. Now, here are groups that will now be eligible that weren't. I may be calling your name out. The American Lung Association in New York, the Bronx Works in the Bronx. Every YMCA and YWCA is now available. They weren't before. The Chinese American Planning Council, the Family Service League on Long Island, Good Shepherd Services, Goodwill Industries, Lutheran Social Services, March of Dimes, and the list goes on. But you're eligible now. Don't please, my one big I have a lot of messages, you know that. But one of my big messages is because you were rejected or didn't qualify the first time, the rules have changed. Please apply again. Republicans tried to strike this, we beat them back. And you helped me, so thank you, thank you, thank you, okay? We also added another $8 billion to make sure we keep going. And just as I said last night, we extended the PPP from May 30th. So with all these new rules, if it was the March 31st deadline, a lot of people would have lost out. You have the Passover and Easter holidays, and people are busy. Oh, and while I mentioned Passover and Easter, churches can apply. A lot of the social service work is done in our poor neighborhoods by the churches. I know that. I'm Jewish, but I'm in more church services than almost any one of you Christians, because I go to even now by Zoom, whatever, you know, several times on Sunday. I love them. But they can apply. They're so important to keeping our communities together, for feeding, for elderly, for children. And so please let churches in your communities know. A lot of the bigger churches have applied, but a lot of the littler churches have not. And the money, just like for PPP or for nonprofits, can pay the salaries, can pay the rent, can pay these kinds of things. Please spread the word on that. We also, in the December bills, put a $15 billion set aside for MDIs, minority depository institutions, and CFDIs, community development, CDFIs, community development financial institutions. They will help you apply. If you're a small nonprofit or you have small nonprofits under your umbrella, please make sure you learn. We'll send you a list of the CDFIs and MDIs in each community. They'll have people there. One of the things we did is we gave them money. They can have people sitting at the phones to help people apply. You're a little nonprofit or a little restaurant for that matter. You have a bank, but no bank, or you don't have an account, but you do your own. So you don't even know how to do this kind of stuff. They will do it for you, okay? Very important. Okay, all of this will be implemented soon. We did another thing in the American Rescue Plan. We increased the federal coverage of the unemployment costs of nonprofits from 50 to 75%. That's a big deal, I think, for people. In the CARES Act, they reduced the amount nonprofits are required to reimburse states for the cost of unemployment benefits by 50. Now it's to 75. That should help you with extra money. And I mentioned the ERTC. Please don't forget that. I want to mention it again. Does everyone know what it is, Chai, or should I go over it?
I think it would be helpful to go over it, yeah, because
Okay.
I agree that it's not on our radar in the same way that PPP is.
Yeah, so the employee retention tax credit is a refundable. That means you get money from the federal government if you don't pay taxes, which of course you don't. And what it does is it's available to all nonprofits and businesses as long as your operations were fully or partially suspended if you've by a government order, or you had a 20% decrease in gross receipts. And so now it's increased from 50 to 70%, and the limit on credible wages goes from 10,000 a year to 40,000 a year, or 10,000 a quarter. This means that, let's say you had you didn't have enough money to pay Joe Dokes, who's making, or Jill Dokes, who's making $35,000 a year. The federal government will send you cash for up to 70% of their salary. Okay, that's a lot. That's a big deal. So we got to get that word out. Okay, I think I've said everything I wanted to say. Chai, did I leave anything out that's important, or Meg, or Kelly, or Tim?
I think we will we'll get to it next, but thank you so much as always, Majority Leader. That was so detail oriented as always, and I'm gonna start sharing my screen so that we can talk through our, as we do during these briefings, we talk through our overarching nonprofit policy priorities, and we have to start with the wins. And I just want to thank so many of you. Of course, thank you so much, Majority Leader Schumer, and thanks to all of you on the Zoom today.
Tim, I left something out. You
Sure,
showed me on the Zoom. We got the state and every local government all the money they need. They have no deficits. And we made sure the localities got it, not just the state. Do not let the state or the locality cut you back. They have no deficit. So if they give you some help, you tell them. And if they try to cut you back, they say they don't have money, you tell them you're going to get Uncle Chuck after them. We will go after them. That's very important. How did I leave that out? In other words,
teamwork. Thank you, Uncle Chuck.
It's Uncle Chuck.
Yes, and that is really huge. You know, we were calling for that and advocating for that for a really long time, and I think that you. By doing that, you have saved nonprofit jobs and you've saved nonprofit organizations, because with our deficit last year, we were seeing nonprofits, their payments were being withheld by 20%, and now they've been reduced to 5%. And we're hopeful as we move into the state budget negotiations that they will hopefully fully funded.
The legislature, Chai, knows this. Carl and Andrea know it. So just talk to them. That you should not be cut one nickel.
Thank you. So let me just take this time to really celebrate our wins, and then I'll go over some of our overarching priorities, and then we'll move into questions. And just a final thanks as well to the National Council of Nonprofits, who they just do amazing, tireless, around the clock analysis and advocacy to keep our nation coordinated. So a lot of the information that I share out is because of people like David Thompson and Tim, and just a really amazing team that we are proud to be members of. So, okay, yes, as the Majority Leader mentioned, the expanded PPP eligibility, we advocated for that for a year, and we did it. Aid to state and local governments, we did it. The New York State budget is intact. Okay, so the 75% unemployment insurance reimbursement is a win. This means that before, nonprofits and self-insured were reimbursed through the CARES Act at 50%. It was bumped up to 75%. Senator Schumer, we are still going to continue to advocate for 100%. In New York State, it's not as much of an issue, but we're advocating on behalf of our sister organizations.
You should advocate. I agree with you.
And also, yesterday was a really big deal with the PPP Extension Act, so thank you for that. Exactly as you said, it allows nonprofits to be able to now apply. And on that, so one thing that's come up, and I may actually have to call upon one of my colleagues to go into detail if you want more specifics, but there's a requirement for PPP second draw that organizations have to show a 25% decline in gross receipts, which is presenting some challenges for nonprofits. And that's because the nonprofit revenue is a little more complex and our expenses have grown over the past year. And so we have heard stories about some organizations that haven't been able to access the second draw because of that. And so our recommendation is to move that to either, exempt nonprofits from that or to move it to 10%.
Can I ask questions, Chai?
Yeah, of course.
And while you praised your staff, I was going to do it at the end, but I'll do it now because my staff, Julieta Lopez, John Cardinal, did a great job on this. And John, first, I believe that the 25% is per quarter. You find 1 quarter, you're below 25, you qualify for the year. Isn't that right, John? Is he on? Julieta, is he
I
on
think,
the phone?
I don't believe John is on.
Okay,
Oh.
okay.
Okay,
So we
but I
can
believe
confirm
that's
that.
true.
Yeah.
Got it.
We
Yeah.
will confirm.
And agreed. We sing the praises of John. We sing the praises of Julieta. So, amazing partnership. Through this, we do support the Work Now Act, which would establish a grant program for the purpose of providing emergency relief to nonprofit organizations. It would also allow nonprofits to hire significantly more employees, kind of similar to the Obama era stimulus, where nonprofits were given grants to hire. And just personally, I was hired as a part-time outreach worker at a nonprofit through the recovery grant in 2009. And so when I think of the Work Now Act, I can't help but think about, how I entered the sector. We're also still continuing to support the Universal Giving Pandemic Response and Recovery Act, which would raise the deduction to roughly.
We moved it up from 300 to 600 in the last bill.
Yes.
Do you
yes.
have a recommendation as to an amount? Because next bill, we will do some tax stuff.
Yeah, so there's actually a bipartisan bill that would raise it to 4,000 for individuals and 8,000 for couples through to 2022. So we can share that information as well.
Good.
Yeah, and then as always, New York is a destination for so many of our immigrant populations who are working year round, and so New York State is home to over 850,000 undocumented New Yorkers. They're currently fasting this week as we speak, and so undocumented workers outside of mixed status families continue to be unable to access relief. And then, of course, racial justice, as Meg so eloquently put.
But wait a minute, Shai. When it comes to PPP, in terms of getting the money, they don't ask your documentation, and the employer can reimburse all employees, and he or she doesn't have to ask documentation. So for PPP, there's no one excluded. Same with healthcare. There is in the checks, which we're trying to fight, and we've expanded it each time. First time, just if you had one ITIN, and now even if both parents are undocumented, the kids get it. We still have a ways to go, but people should know that the PPP program, no one's going to ask anything about documentation.
Got it. Thank you for that. And we'll continue to share those resources out as well, which is a great segue as we end on, centering racial justice in our recovery to our first questioner. And so it is my pleasure to now introduce Carlin Cohen, Chief Policy and Public Affairs Officer at the Chinese American Planning Council.
Good afternoon, and Senator Schumer, thank you so much for your remarks today. My name is Carlin Cohen. My pronouns are they and she, and as Chai mentioned, I'm here on behalf of the Chinese American Planning Council to provide a visually accessible description. I am a mixed race person of Filipinx and Jewish heritage. I am gender non-conforming. I have dark hair that is shaved on one side, long on the other. I'm wearing a black shirt and sitting in front of a white wall in my office with a red poster in the background that some of our young people drew that says, "We empower our community." And I am calling in from Manhattan, which is unceded Lenape territory. Senator Schumer, thank you so much for these updates, which were incredibly helpful. I'm really pleased that CPC is now eligible for the PPP loans, as we are a organization with over 500 staff. So thank you so much for your advocacy to include us in that really valuable resource. As you may know, CPC serves many immigrant, undocumented, and elder Asian communities in New York City, many of whom were not eligible for unemployment or stimulus relief. We've been doing wellness checks with our community members throughout the pandemic to take care of them. And in recent wellness surveys, we actually learned that 70% of our community members have lost jobs or income, which was up from 50% of our community members last year around this time. We're obviously also really concerned about the recent rise in anti-Asian violence and here in New York City. And we also know at the same time that the scapegoating and targeting of the Asian community is part of broader systemic racism in the United States, which is rooted in white supremacy. And a big part of that is xenophobia and anti-immigrant sentiment. So I would love to hear a little bit more from you about how Congress plans to address systemic racism, everything from anti-Asian hate to Black Lives Matter. And then you also touched on that, undocumented people will now be eligible for PPP, but I'm curious to hear what else Congress is working to do to provide relief to workers that have been excluded.
Okay, that's a big order and I don't want to take too much time, but let me go over a few things. First, as I said, the anti-Asian violence just breaks my heart. And I've talked to so many people. I've been to just about every rally. I don't know. One of them, I think, was done by your group, right? Yeah. And it breaks my heart just to walk up to people and they're scared. They have fear in their eyes. Young people, old people, middle-aged people, because of what might happen to them. And look, racism is an underlying thing in America. What we try to do as a society is eliminate it, but at least push it down. And under 4 years of Trump, he encouraged it. So we have a lot of ground to make up and let, in a certain sense, he let the id of bigotry out and the super ego of fighting bigotry and equality was somewhat pushed away. And that we saw, for instance, with Chinese people, his anti-Asian rhetoric. So first, as I told you, as I mentioned, the bill by Senator Hirono and Duckworth to address COVID-related hate crimes against Asian Americans will be on the floor of the Senate the day we get back. So I would hope that every group, because racism against one is racism against all, will weigh in across the country, Tim, with their senators to support this legislation. We hope our Republican friends will, but you never know what they will do. We also have a second bill we put on the floor by Senator Durbin to counter the threat of domestic terrorism and violent white supremacy. This bill passed the House of Representatives last year. And when Mitch McConnell was in charge, none of these good bills would see the light of day. I'm forcing these sons of guns to vote on each one. Let's see where they stand, because the public is with us, even if some of the Republican senators are not. Third, one of my things I want to put on the floor to deal with racism in law enforcement is the Justice and Policing Act. It is the most broad, extensive legislation in that regard, eliminating chokeholds, eliminating no-knock warrants, getting rid of qualified immunity. So if a policewoman does something bad, they can be sued for it. Lowers the standard of intent, puts out a list of all those who were dismissed because of racist activity, so they can't be rehired by somebody else. They often get fired by one police department and go to another. It was designed by Ben Crump. Ben Crump is the greatest civil rights lawyer around, and he wrote it with Cory Booker, Kamala Harris, who was then a senator, and me. Okay, so we're doing lots of things there. I could go on. Every piece in this bill says treat communities of color first, whether it's the vaccines or the housing or the everything we try to do to make up for decades of racism. And here's one good thing I didn't mention. Black farmers have been particularly oppressed. In fact, here's what Jim Clyburn, we don't have too many in New York, so I'm not that familiar with it. Well, I wasn't, now I am. Jim Clyburn told me that Black farmers have less land today than they had 100 years ago. It's like slavery. It's still like slavery, or at the very minimum, indentured servitude. We put $4 billion in to help them. And for Native Americans, not only did I get Deb Haaland through, the first Native American in the cabinet, who, by the way, will not only do that, but prevent our federal lands from being exploited by oil and gas, which Trump allowed. But we did more for Native Americans than ever done in history. Tribal governments are now treated equally with state and local governments. They get $20 billion. Indian Health gets another $3 billion. It's a great thing. Okay, now let me get to immigrants, which was the last part of your question. Okay, there's a lot to say, and I have another Zoom, and this Zoom world is crazy. You don't have any time to go in your car and go visit someone. You sit on the Zoom all day long. 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. Here I got 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock. I'd like to eat lunch too. But in any case, here are some things. First, On negative amendments, Senator Cruz tried to take away direct payments from mixed status families and US citizens. Every senator voted no, including those from very red states where it was hard for them to do. Senator Cornyn put up a really nasty amendment. He said, keep the kids away from their parents until the parents' situation is adjudicated. That would keep them away for months and even years. Beat that back. Young tried to increase money for Border Patrol, which the immigrant community is very much against. We beat it back. Cotton tried to take away money from sanctuary cities. Beat it back. Here are the things in the bill. It's not everything, Carolyn, but it's progress. That's what we got to make in the Senate. Direct payments, as you know, a member of a mixed status family with SSN qualifies in the new bill. And we now have expanded eligibility to children and dependents with SSNs. They're eligible for payments, even if both parents are undocumented. Okay, so that's a big thing. There's 22 billion in direct payments. The EITC, the Earned Income Tax Credit, which will do so much to uplift poor people and working poor people. We've taken away the Social Security ID requirement, so everyone can get that. Enhanced expanded ACA tax credits. This is the tax credits for American, the Affordable Care Act. Gone, everyone gets it. Healthcare investments, we put 7.6 billion for community health centers, no requirement for documentation. COVID vaccine and testing, no requirement for documentation. Pandemic electronic benefit transfer, no requirement for documentation. So a lot, not all, but a good chunk of the benefits are now going to flow to the undocumented. What is my dream? I mean, you know this because I say it all the time. My middle name is Ellis, for Ellis Island. We named my daughter's middle name Emma, for Emma Lazarus, the poet who wrote on the Statue of Liberty, give me your poor, your tired, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. My goal is to get all 11 million legalized so we won't have to path to citizenship, so we won't have to go through all this. But until we get that, we're making progress. Long answer, but a very important question.
Yes, an important answer. Thank you. Thank you, Majority Leader. I would now like to introduce Brian Parcheski, President and CEO of Berkshire Farm Center and Services for Youth.
And thank you, Senator Schumer, for your time today and efforts for our community and all that we serve. Again, my name is Brian Parcheski, and I'm the CEO of Berkshire Farm Services and Center for Youth. We serve children throughout New York State, about 2,000 kids and families a day. I'm a light-skinned Caucasian male. Today I'm wearing, my pronouns are he and him. Today I'm wearing a white shirt with a green tie and a black coat, standing in front of a brick wall with some white signs on it. Certain programs for not-for-profit center were expanded underneath the Families First Act and CARES Act that are in real danger of expiring. We hear lots about PPP and unemployment, but another really important program is the federal reimbursement for Title IV prevention programs, which was temporarily increased to 100% from its 50% standard through the end of September 2021. Unfortunately, we're not quite ready to take advantage of that in New York because we haven't implemented the Families First Act here yet and are not set to do so till right when that reimbursement runs back to its normal 50%. I'm sure everyone's aware we've had some really devastating outcomes for children during this pandemic. According to a United Hospital Fund report, 325,000 of New York State kids have been placed at or near the poverty line. 4,200 kids have lost a parent or caregiver. Senator, we're in really desperate need of evidence-based practices, particularly in upstate and rural areas of New York State, to serve these children and families. And my question to you is this: could the federal government continue to support 100% federal funding for these programs and other important expansions for not-for-profits for both the Families First Act and CARES Act?
Okay, thank you, Brian. And you raise a very good point about in regards to the longer Family First implementation for New York. I don't know why they did that, but they did. And that how that coincides with the reduced funding to the 4E prevention services for children at imminent risk of foster care. So I'm going to work with the Biden administration. There may be a way we can federally preempt that. Let's see. That's an idea that we have. We don't know if we can succeed, but we'll try. Okay. Now, I want to bring to your attention another piece, though, of the American Rescue Plan that didn't specifically apply to nonprofits, so I didn't mention it. But what I secured in there was reforms to the child tax credit, the earned income tax credit, as you know. These credits are very, very important, and you know that they will help the most vulnerable people in society. So that at least puts some money in people's pockets right away to deal with this. The CTC is fully refundable, as you know. It's 3.56 million children, including the children in terrible shape who you mentioned, will get it. And by the way, this goes not just to the impoverished, but many in the working class, the working poor, et cetera, up into the middle class. It's very important that people know that. 3.56 million children in New York will benefit, but 680,000 will get out of poverty. And the EITC gets 910,000 workers affected who are working poor, and they're going to get some more money. So these things in the federal law ameliorate, but don't get at exactly what you said. And we will work with you to see if we can get the feds to preempt it. And I'm sure you good folks are working the legislature to try and change it, right? Do they show any openness to changing it?
It's hard to determine their appetite for that. There's some conversation though.
Okay, good. All right. Well, in any case, Chai, I think it's 2 o'clock or close to it. So I think I'll have to sign off if that's okay with you.
That's okay. We appreciate so much of your time. Thank you so much, Majority Leader Schumer, as always, and we hope to see you soon.
Good. Well, thank you for the good work you do. And please don't forget, send out word that Schumer and the Democrats did some good here. That makes people want to vote, even though you're not a voting organization. I know you can't advocate for that. It makes people care and see that someone is actually helping them and looking out for them in these very difficult times. But thank you for, most importantly, for the good work you all do. I believe in you. I love you. Right back at you.
Thank you.
Bye, folks.
Thanks, Uncle Chuck.
Thanks, Uncle Chuck. And thank you all so much for joining us today. Here is our contact information. As always, we'll send a follow-up, and we hope everybody has a great weekend. And yes, we are very pro civic engagement. Clarification, we are nonpartisan. With that, have a great Friday and a great weekend, everyone.
All right.
And
Thanks.
Shai, just for everyone who's been on this call, thank you for moderating. You are extremely talented in doing so. So thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, bye, everybody.
Thank you. This
Good
was
weekend.
wonderful.